Testing, 1 2 3. Testing, 1 2 3. Testing, 1 2 1 2 1 2. Hey there, hi there, ho there. Hey, this is Ralph Hayes Jr., RH Jr. Reality check coming to you live over the internet through a series of tubes known as the boob tube we call YouTube, bringing you yet another contribution to the debris and litter on the information highway. This is Ralph Hayes Jr. bringing you another broadcast of my little contribution, Spleen Squeezins. Boom, 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 boom. I waited until 1 in the morning to broadcast this one. Hope you don't have insomnia. Okay, just had to do that. I'm feeling evil. I'm full of caffeine and sugar. I've had a very good day. I had actually a great day. Finally, after much trials and tears and tribulation, I made it to the doctor's office. My insurance company finally found a company that had vehicles that could transport it. I told them the only way I could get them to do it right is you need to get a wheelchair accessible van. I don't use a wheelchair, but a wheelchair accessible van is the only vehicle that is large enough for my huge mutated butt, you know. And lo and behold, round about the time I needed to go to the doctor's office, she pulls up. She's from Go something. I can't remember the name of the company. It's Go something. Anyway, you just saw that was the sound of ad revenue dying. But not seriously. I don't. I'm not paid for my advertising. This is how, I don't make any money at this. I don't make any money from advertising or nothing. So when I promote a product, it's because I like it. Not because they paid me to like it. Now, drink Dr. Pepper. Now, she pulled up, and she's a nice lady. Nice as could be. She had her little Wuhan Kung Flu virus mask on, and she came out, and she helped me, and just set me up, and she opened up the back, and the panel came up, boom, and I got inside and sat down on I had a little chair and sat down on a chair in the back, and away we went. And she was a very nice lady, very friendly, very social, and she drove me to the doctor's office, and I got out there, and lo and behold, got in the doctor's office, didn't have to wait long. What a surprise. And got my legs looked at, and voila, I've got a prescription for antibiotics, and they're scheduling me for going to the wound care center. But now that I have, now that they've finally found regular transportation that can carry my fat ass, ta-da! Life is better. And on the way back, I found out, hey, surprise, guess what? My insurance cover, they don't tell you these things. You have to go trolling through you don't even think to look for these things. So how, you have to go digging through the microfine print and everything to find this stuff out. And first of all, you have to look for it. Second of all, you have to you have to think of it to look for it. But anyway, they cover transportation to the pharmacy. I'm like, oh. And I arranged it so that on the way back, we stopped at the Walmart pharmacy, and I got my prescriptions filled. So, yay! I got that. And the nice thing is while they were, it took them about 10-15 minutes to fill my prescriptions. And while they were doing that, I managed to load up on junk food. While I was at, 10-15 minutes, I'm like, I wasn't exactly in the aisle for the vitamin cookies, you know what I'm saying? So, I'm like, oh, Twinkies, The first thing I saw was a rack with some, Twizzlers on it. I'm like, oh! But at first, I tried to be a good boy. I was like, oh, while I'm waiting for this, I'll go get some milk. I'm out of milk. I got the milk. Then I got 3 or 4 boxes of snack cakes. I've snarfed my way almost entirely through the box of Rice Krispie things I got. and and then some Twizzlers and what else? A giant tub of Cheeto Puffs, those little round cheese ball things, and also and rotisserie chicken for dinner, which I already ate, and some Dr. Pepper, which I am guzzling. Hooray, Dr. Pepper! Yay, yippee-ki-yay, yippee-yi-yay, yippee-yi-yo, caffeine, whee! But, and I get home, and she even helped me unload. She helped me put the stuff up, got the bags up on the porch. She's like, just, no big deal. You were in there. Nice lady, and I hope that she is my driver next time. Because, hooray. And so, I feel better. I feel, I haven't healed up yet, obviously, but I feel better for having a doctor look at my legs, and he says, okay, they're not infected or anything, which is nice to know, but we're putting on some antibiotics to be sure. That's also nice to know. And, I get all that, and get all the medicines I need to put all that on. And so, I'm good to go. Hooray. But, moving on. So it was a good day. Ha. Then I came home and went on the internet. Not really, not that bad. But, there's, if you want to find something to annoy, you can find anything on the internet. You can find anything on the internet. Even something to ruin a good day. I don't know who. There's this feature on my web browsers, Firefox web browser. When you open up, I think it's a Google thing. The Google homepage, it has these little suggested columns you might want to read, and there's like 9 of them, 9 or 12 of them or something. Well, more than that. I'm counting here. Well, let's see. These, but it's basically just almost entirely just opinion drivel columns. Foreignpolicy.com. The end of economics. Tagline: human beings are rarely rational, so it's time we all stop pretending they are. Basically, what this is basically they don't like the fact that the cold, hard laws of economics don't play along with their, leftist frou-frou worldview. And he says, "Oh well, these things about rational actors in the open market, it's all rubbish because people behave rationally." Yeah, well, the thing of it is that they don't understand here. Economics, the laws of economics, like supply and demand, do not rely on people behaving rationally any more than gravity relies on somebody jumping off a building deciding to believe in it or not. The end result, whether the person jumping off the building thinks they're going to die or thinks they're going to take off like Superman, the results are going to be the same. Logic isn't about what people believe. It's about what happens regardless of what people believe. And economics is a very cold, logical system. The only people who have trouble with economics are the people who desperately want to ignore it. Every wannabe Marxist. Man, Marxism, a philosophy that has destroyed millions and billions of lives. Formulated by a man who was nothing more than a couch-surfing bum. That's it. Karl Marx never held a job, a paying job in his life. He never worked for anybody. He just hung around with intellectuals, spouted his philosophical drivel, and then quite literally spent his life couch surfing with one admirer or another. Of course, when you live in a Victorian mansion, it's a little bit more of a couch to surf on, you know. But he was a bum who didn't like the idea of holding a job. Well, let's clue you in, Carl. Nobody likes the idea of work. That's why it's called work and not fun. Anyway, you just all these people are opening their gobs and and just letting the stupid fall out. The end of economics. Yeah, you know what the picture is for this end of economics column? It's a picture of that. You know the statue on Wall Street of the bull. And you know how the feminists put up a little girl in a dress, standing in front of the charging bull. You know, it was supposed to be a comment on girl power. What it ended up being was a comment on girl stupid. Because anybody who looked at it said, yeah, that girl's about to be, buffalo chips. And an arrogant girl standing there athwart of something that's going to kill her. Feminism in a nutshell. Anyway, it's crazy. It's crazy town out there. Went to Walmart, got my getting my prescriptions, and everybody was wearing masks, and and they're doing the fun. Okay. I look at it this way. This is ridiculous. It's become ridiculous. Let me put as many people. Yes, there's a terrible death toll, but guess what? It's not. It's not even a third the death toll of flu every year. Flu, ordinary bog standard flu kills more people every year. Now, the death rate for a coronavirus is like 0.1%, or 1%. I forget, but it's much higher than the flu. But that's because the very old and the very sick are vulnerable to it. And the usual, the army of the stupids are coming out. They're calling anybody who questions the wisdom of our response to the COVID virus. They're calling us. You're calling us. They're calling everybody that questions the wisdom of this and complains about government excess of abuse of authority in this process. They're calling us. They're calling them. Virus deniers, because we're the ones who aren't living with the reality. These are all the people that go around saying this kind of thing are the kind of people who can afford to sit on their butts for a month and a half, 2 months, 3 months at a time. They have, you got these Hollywood actresses sit at home. It's like being in prison, and their house is bigger than most. The mansion they live in is big enough to have a prison in it. Oh, here's another winning one. A belief in meritocracy is not only false, it's bad for you. For those who don't know, meritocracy is the belief that the ideal system is where those those who are qualified should rise. Those who are competent, qualified, those who work hard, that show merit, should prosper. And this is another, you can almost see the man bun on top of the author's head. It encourages selfishness and discrimination. The old you're racist and you hate poor people. Why? Because I think a person who does a good job should get the raise. Yeah, typical. Yes. I swear this the algorithm that this web browser uses to pick out these columns, suggested columns, it ought to be called the Schmuck of the Hour Roundup. Eh. Let's see. Married a heiress, and then left her to rot in a hovel to hang out with his rich friends. Yeah. You're saying that Mark's married a woman and left her in the lurch. What a surprise! He's a bozo. He's a bum. Okay, but moving on from politics. This sort of flew up my nose today. Everything flies up my nose. I just got a jetliner runway straight up my left nostril, I think. Okay, comments in Archive of Our Own. I was talking. I stumbled across a couple of I read a lot. I read a lot of fan fiction. I read a lot of fan fiction. I read a lot of fan fiction, but I read a lot of it. And one story in particular was a Harry Potter fan fiction, and I read it. And the premise was interesting, but, and this is a but. This is a big but. It's a heavy butt. It's the biggest, heaviest, widest butt you've ever seen. The guy doesn't know how to write kids. The author does not know how to write. I've seen this in several different occasions, but this guy was particularly bad about it. He basically, this is a problem I see with a lot of authors. They write, even when Harry Potter is like 11 years old, the people writing his, in these fan fictions, writing his dialogue, writing his adventures, his actions, his thoughts, and that of his friends, they write them like they're 20-year-old bankers. Or 20-year-old college students, maybe I should say. And I put out, dude, you're writing, one of the things I've prided myself on, one of the things I've always been flattered about is that people have complimented me on the fact that I'm fairly good at writing young children. Even when I was just first starting out, is that I had a knack for it. Well, I suppose so. Particularly in Nightmare Night and Nyx. That I was told that I grasped the idea of childlike fears and how children think, and maybe it went to my head a little bit, but I'm not just blowing I'm not just blowing stuff out my rear end here. I'm not just talking through my hat. And I point out, I wrote comments in the comment section. Okay, your story's interesting, but your characters, you're writing the characters as if they were 20 or 30 years old. And I said, children don't talk like this. Children don't think like this. You really need to go back. I don't know. Talk to spend some time talking to an actual child, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And immediately, several white knights jumped in, and invoked artistic license. How dare you criticize him? We hereby invoke artistic license. And they wave their magic wands, and all the criticism goes away. And several of them said,
Well, when I was a child, I was told I was very precocious and very mature for my age, and I used language like this.
and I'm like,
No, you didn't, Poindexter. You just think you did.
seriously. And I'm like, and the conversation went round and round and round. And let's see here, what was the most recent comments? Wow. Quote, Badger blood for life. I'm commenting here on my own show because I know that if I answer this guy like I really want to, one of them would go running off crying to mommy and get me suspended again. Because I was being mean and hurtful, and we're pretty sure he's a homophobe, and, whatever worked, He was oppressing us, But anyway, Badger blood for life. Good grief. What a knob. Okay, his response. Wow, you need to chill. Also, authors 100% have a creative license when writing children. They're authors writing their book, fic, article, whatever. Who pissed in your Cheerios? Who pissed in my Cheerios? You pissed in my Cheerios, Badger blood for life. Now, you walked up, whipped it out, and wee-weed all over my Cheerios, okay? Because you're a knob. You're an idiot, and you don't know what you're talking about. Furthermore, I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to the author. Shut up, butt out. It is my heartfelt wish. It is my deepest, most direst fantasy. Give me 3 wishes from the genie in the lamp. I would waste 2 of them on making sure this happened. I wish that every one of these people that writes children as if they were 30-year-old adults, and worse, who come running up and defend the author for, this is their artistic license, and all this other bullshit. I wish to high heaven that they would spend an entire quarantine trapped in a small building with about a dozen children, ranging from around the age of 8. And their only job is they have to answer every question the children ask. Now, assuming they came out the other end without killing themselves by slamming their head in the refrigerator door until the pain stopped, I'm sure they would be very enlightened about what children really talk and think like. They would have a whole broad, brand new world view of what children are like. The scales would have fallen away. And the light would have dawned. And maybe, just maybe, these authors would stop trying to write write these characters as if they were 20-year-olds wearing 11-year-old costumes. I'm sorry. It's just, writing teenagers is difficult enough because it's that middle ground. It's that middle territory where you're irrational. You're still young and irrational as hell, and you're young, dumb, and full of crap, and yet at the same time you're not a child anymore. You don't quite think like a child, but you don't quite think like an adult yet either. So that's tough, Terry. But children, little children. And we're, and 11 years old is a very little child.
I talked like that when I was a child.
I don't care if you shat encyclopedias as a child. You were, your parent, yes,
my mother said I was very mature and well-spoken for me.
Oh, well, good. Mommy will give you a cookie. I guarantee you. You think that you were a little adult in kids, but you were not. I have enough trouble trying to find actual adults in adult bodies. I mean, you're not going to find them in a 6-year-old. Get out of here. I really want to kill the people that write these, write Harry Potter and his friends. At the age of 11, like they were, 17 and, up to their earlobes in hormones. $11, 12 years old, and they're all, they're already pawing each other in the story. I'm like, oh, gee, what the hell's wrong with you people? Give me a break. The kid's balls haven't even dropped yet. Get the hell away from the keyboard. Just move. Get away. Yeah. Oh yeah, and give him sugar. Oh, forget that. I'll drop in a couple. I'll airlift in a couple of crates of Red Bull just for the kids. Just to crank it up a little bit. I would, man. I'm mean, man. I'll try for the polite, constructive criticism. They don't want polite, constructive criticism. And they want everybody's lips slurping across their buttocks. That's what they want. Oh, this is Disney Star Wars sequel trilogy toys don't sell, says toy exec. Oh, you mean toys from the Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and whatever the hell the last one was called? Don't sell. What a shocker. Just what a stunning surprise. These people, man alive. This quarantine is a mercy kill for Disney, if you ask me. It's a mercy kill for Disney. Because they're going to blame. Disney will blame their implosion. They'll blame it all on the quarantine, but they were already crashing and burning. The plane was already falling out of the sky before the virus struck. They bought all these franchises. They bought up Lucasfilm. They bought up LucasArts. That's the name of the company, LucasArts. They bought up Jim Henson Productions. They bought up Marvel. They bought up. They tried to buy just about everything. You couldn't. They wanted a world where you couldn't look in any direction or you didn't see Mickey Mouse ears. And the thing of it is, they stopped producing. They turned their creative juices on. They figured that what it was is the majority of their finances, the majority of their funding, comes from the amusement parks, not from the movies, not from the cartoons. That's where most of their revenue flow came from those amusement parks. And a sizable chunk from those cruise lines. But, and this is a big heavy but, they forgot that it was the cartoons and the entertainment that made the parks interesting in the first place. Disney could not have built Disneyland without making Mickey Mouse first. And if he had dropped Mickey Mouse, and just went off and made Disneyland, made some park, didn't even put his name on it, just made an amusement park, it probably would have flopped. You wreck the franchise. The franchises may not provide the money, but they support everything else. and they proceeded to take the franchises that were under their flag and wreck them, because they figured it didn't matter. This was the same mistake they made back prior to The Little Mermaid, around about that time, about mid 90s or 80s, and they decided, at different points they decided, oh, we don't need Pixar anymore, and they decided we don't need to make animated features anymore. And they figured they would coast for all eternity on their franchise products and merchandise without actually having any stories to support them. And they were going to go all direct to video with their own own computer animation, and heck with everybody else. Then they ended up having to beg artists to come back, traditional animators to come back, and they had to beg Pixar to come back. This time around, they didn't have the inertia to survive it, because boom, the parks were gone. Thanks to the virus, everything had to shut down, and so now, whoop-de-doo. The wings have fallen off and they're taking a nosedive straight down. And if you ask me, thank God for it, because Disney has Disney has hogged and hoarded America's cultural history for nearly 100 years now. About time they got the air let out of their tires. And if they collapse completely and shatter into a dozen different companies, all the better. Because they got so big they thought they didn't have to compete with anybody. And that's the same thing that happened to Marvel. They got so big they thought they didn't have to compete with anybody, and they let idiots take over because they didn't think it mattered. And they let and what's worse is in the movies and in the comic industry and gaming industry, you had companies were letting their employees act. Let me put it this way. If suppose you worked in a grocery store. Suppose you worked in a grocery store or in a retail store, or whatever, and you worked behind the counter at the cash register, or you boxes, whatever. How long would your job last if your boss caught you telling the customers that they were a bunch of basement-dwelling losers? That is precisely what these actors and actresses, what these comic book artists and writers, what these feminists on the fringe of the gaming industry did. This is what the women who wrecked the Ghostbusters reboot did. They had just torpedoed a fairly solid franchise into pieces, making a craptacular feminist soapbox / crappy remake. and they called anybody that didn't like it a sexually insecure virgin male. I've harped on this again and again and again, but it bears repeating because it's still going on. Instead of firing these people, the instant they behave this way, instead of firing them like they should have, they're like, oh, we the management of Marvel and DC and Lucas Arts and Disney, they just shrugged and went on their way. And guess what? They alienated their customers. We don't care about those stupid fanboys. You moron. Fan. The other word for fan is customer. And you just tolerated the hired help, flipping all your customers the bird. And now you're hitting the skids. You're borrowing billions of dollars, and people are staying away in droves because you made it clear that you wanted nothing to do with them. Congratulations. Congratulations. I hope it was worth, I hope kissing the gay pride movement's butt was worth losing all your customer base. Because you were willing to tolerate absolutely anything out of these social justice wimps. So long as they were on the right side of the political issues, you let them get away with murder, and people got sick of them. And going from zero to completely sick of somebody like that is, a short trip indeed. Now, here's another one. Trans woman in other words, a man in drag, redesigns snowflake and safe space. There's a video on YouTube. Okay. This is somebody who is completely missed what the problem is with the new Avengers. It's not the character designs that are the problem. It's not the artwork that's the problem. It's the snowflake jinglist warrior bullcrap that it's all wrapped up in. I don't know what they were thinking. Whether they think that, I remember they tried to reboot one of their old Western comics. What is it? The Frisco Kid, the Ringo Kid, something like that. And they brought the comic back. Marvel did. Or was it? Well, I forget whether it was Marvel or DC. They tried to bring their old Western comic back, and the main character was something like the Frisco Kid or something, and they made him gay. It bombed. It bombed like a B-2 over Hiroshima. Here, let me paint a picture for you. Let me be absolutely politically incorrect. Ooh, he's going to be politically incorrect. Get the crucifix and the holy water. People don't like LGBTQ. Because when they're completely honest with themselves, they'll admit that these people, LGBTQ, they're not a movement. They're not a new gender or group of gender. They're not a new race or species, for crying out loud. They're a bunch of seriously sexually messed up people who want to be praised for their illness. And told that, no matter how messed up they are, oh, it's a wonderful way to be. No, it isn't. Even when society is bending over backwards to give the LGBTQ community everything they want and more. Their emotional problems, their health problems, psychological problems, the suicide, everything from physical illnesses to psychological breakdowns and suicide rates. It's a mess. Gay people don't like to hear that. Well, people don't like to hear they have cancer either. Fat people don't like to hear they're fat. That they need to exercise. I don't like to hear it. I'm fat. No, but I admit it. I've got certain obstacles in my path that prevent me from exercising too easily. It's more a matter of being fat. It's also a matter of being partially disabled because of my legs. But I'm getting off track. The point is that these people don't want to hear that there is anything wrong with them. It's just another army of people that are full of fury and rage that anybody out there would dare to suggest there's anything wrong with them. That it needs help, that it needs fixed, that it needs cured, that, however you want to put it. You take, transsexual. I'm sorry, transsexual man, transsexual, a trans. Whenever they say, this is always the fun one because they say transsexual. Do you mean a man who's becoming a woman, or a man who's trying to become a woman, or a woman who's trying to become a man, or just throw us a cue here, a clue, just, which way are we going here? But either way, I'm sorry. A transvestite is just a man dressed like a woman or a woman dressed like a man. They're not. They're not. They're not a woman trapped in a man's body or vice versa. Well, I just feel it so deep inside me. Yeah, well, big deal. I know people online who swear up and down that they're reincarnated Klingons. No, I'm not making that up. There are people out there who insist that they are that they are reincarnations of the Na'vi from that movie Avatar. Yeah, the blue cat Smurf alien people. They seriously, stone cold serious. There are people out there that insist that they're, you've seen the video clip. In all aspects except all aspects except physical, I am actually a wolf. Ruff! And no, what you are is a young man with a lot of emotional problems who's trying to escape in a delusion. And these people that have had sex change operation, no, you have not changed your sex. You're a mutilated man. You're a mutilated woman. And you are in for a world of grief. Look, one of the stats they don't talk about. The stat was I forget whether it was 80 or 90%. 80 or 90% of transsexuals are they're on record 80 to 90% of transsexuals, whether you're talking the ones that are going through who just started hormone treatments or the ones who are post-op, they have a criminal record for violent assault, where the police had to be called in on them as the instigators. Okay, you could say, oh well, they got mugged by a bigot. No, these are cases where the transsexual attacked other people. And I was like, that can't be right. 90%. Yeah, and then the guy was pointed out the very simple fact. Have two words: roid rage. You take a man who is a weightlifter who abuses steroids, which are basically synthetic testosterone. Steroids, they abuse steroids, and their psyche goes off the rails. They become extreme. They have extreme emotional problems, including extreme violent behavior. Now, you take a transsexual, somebody who's going through hormone treatment. They are subjecting themselves more hormones in one go on a regular basis than the most rabid steroid abuser would ever dream of putting in their body. I mean, look at a woman going through PMS. Her emotions are all over the place just because her regular hormones are just slightly high or low. Now, take somebody who is injecting themselves with more hormones than an entire squad of PMSing women have. Gee, I wonder why their behavior is so irrational. And nobody really talks about it. Nobody talks about it because everybody's trying to convince these people, they're afraid to say anything. If I say anything, negative about this, I'll be labeled sexist. I'll be labeled racist. I'll be labeled homophobe. I'll play along and tell them what a wonderful lifestyle they've chosen for themselves. There are people out there who, what surgical addiction is? This is an actual thing. People who become addicted to, plastic surgery. No matter how much they get operated on, they're convinced that this was Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson, man went from being a poor black boy to a rich middle-aged white woman. Actually, he went from being a poor black boy to being Skeletor, and he was convinced that no matter what they did, they could not make him convinced that he wasn't hideous. Until eventually they had hacked away at his face so much that he was appalling to look at. And his dumbass family was no help either. Apparently, their favorite nickname for him when he was a little boy was Big Nose. That tied it over well in his older years. Anyway, surgical addiction. People get addicted to plastics or just plain surgery of any sort, and they'll just wreck their bodies. It's called dysmorphia. When they're dressing it like the condition it really is, it's called dysmorphia, where no matter the delusion that your body isn't right and that you have to carve it up to fix it. It's a mental illness. There are people out there that they want their limbs amputated, not for any health reason, but because they feel that they are naturally meant to be an amputee. I'm not kidding. I'm not making this up. And the rest of the world and the rest of the medical community normally looks at people like this and goes, "You're sick in the head. You need help." But come in there and a man says, "Please chop my wiener off and sew a fake vagina on," and everybody goes, "You got it," and away they go. Hey, guess what? Same thing! And, red flags. I can almost hear the ding, 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 ding as little red flags pop up all over my account now. I don't care anymore. I never cared, but now I'm just gonna say it. No. These people need help. They also, a good number of them need a swift kick in the ass, too. You're being a dumbass. You're hurting yourself. People don't like to hear, "Oh, how can you say that?" Look, when you deal with a child, and these people are retreating into childish emotional fantasies. When you deal with a child, eventually, it comes a time when they do something so profoundly stupid, you just gotta pop them one to get it through their head. That was really stupid. Some of these people, they will wreck themselves and they will wreck other people's lives to get their way. That's the bigger part of the problem now. They've reached a point where it's not enough that they've utterly buggered up their own lives, if you'll pardon the expression. They're going out and insisting that everybody else's lives have to be distorted out of shape to accommodate them. And I get a lot of these people that, try to fence it. Get off the fence. Get off the fence. Get off the fence. You're not morally superior for sitting on a fence. What you are is an idiot with a fence post up your crotch. And when people when people sling mud and rotten fruit at you from either side of the fence, you deserve it. Because you're showing your moral cowardice, your unwillingness to take your cowardice in refusing to take a side, and you're trying to retranslate it into being morally superior to either side. Oh, well, I don't take sides. Horse crap. You've got a side, you just don't have the guts to stick to it. What's worse, you're an accomplished evil. A person who refuses to take a side is an accomplished evil by their passivity. They're hauling away people in boxcars, and you're standing there. Oh, I'm not into politics. Bat your lashes at the sky. How much forgiveness did the companies and the businessmen who came out of Nazi Germany get from the rest of the world? The people are long dead, but they're still being blamed and despised for refusing to take a side. The man who sits on a fence is taking the devil's side in an argument. It's one thing to sit on a fence because you're undecided about a moral issue, but most people aren't up there because they're undecided about whether something is right or wrong. They're up there because they don't want to back up what they believe is right, what they know is right, by putting their butt on the line. And they don't realize that all they're getting for their trouble is a sore crotch and splinters up their butt. Oh no, extremism, no. It's always extremism, it's always extremism when it's on the opposite side of the fence from what leftists want. I mean, every single year, every single election year, they've pulled the same crap. The Republican Party will field a bunch of candidates, And the leftist media will look through the candidates and they'll pick out the most left-leaning one in the GOP stable. So, oh, he's a compromiser. He worked great. America needs, if the Republicans are going to be in power, they need a compromiser like him. And what was the name of it? McCain. Before he was nominated for president, the Democrats thought he was the greatest thing since sliced cheese. He was a rhino, Republican in name only. He was so far over on the Democrat Party platform, he might as well have been standing next to the Democrat candidate. But the instant he was nominated for the election, suddenly people were coming out with political cartoons of him, with a mouthful of shark's teeth eating a baby. And no, I'm not making that up. People don't seem to, but I've wandered all over. My point is these companies, even the ones that are starting to get a clue, don't quite seem to get the message. People aren't annoyed with SJWs because they're too preachy. They're annoyed with them because they're SJWs. Their politics, such as they are childish pap. Their beliefs are rubbish, and their social agenda is a nightmare in the making. And their goal for America is to turn it into a cesspit. Just 1 year of activism. This whole thing started in about 2014, 2015. That's when the whole SJW thing started rolling. And within 1 year, people didn't know what frickin' bathroom to go to. Because they were running around trying to insist that a man in a dress had a right to go into a woman's bathroom. Oh, what a surprise! Shortly after they pushed the law through, saying that you couldn't stop a tranny from going into the ladies' room, they had case after case popping out where women were being sexually harassed and assaulted. I mean, even children, young girls being sexually harassed and assaulted by these men. I'm tired of living in a world where I'm expected to be quiet and go along with somebody else's mental illness. Being screwed up in the head is not a superpower. It doesn't make you a magical fairy princess. It doesn't give you special status. And it shouldn't be tolerated, and people shouldn't be forced to tolerate it any more than they should be expected to tell every lunatic on the street, "Oh yes, you're President Eisenhower. How do you do? Oh, you're Napoleon. Pleased to meet you, sir." No. Enough. How many of you have ever read Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing or Super Fudge when you were a kid? Story about this is written from the perspective of a 10-year-old boy. I forget how old he was, but and he has a kid brother who's basically a spoiled brat. And the older boy is just, well, he basically just miserable because everybody panders to his younger brother. His name is Farley Drexel. His parents are, the parents are basically a couple of what we call today progressive flatheads, and just a couple of hippie idiots. And the kid's name is Farley Drexel, but everybody calls him Fudge. The boy gets it in his head. That he wants to grow up to be a bird. And his older brother Peter's going, don't do that. He's going to do something stupid. And all the adults are, oh, you're being silly, Peter, and they fawn over the kid and play along with him, and then one day when the kids are at the park, and the babysitter, the girl who's supposed to be babysitting Fudge, turns her back, and Fudge climbs up to the top of the monkey bars and yells, "Look, I'm going to fly like a bird, Peter!" And he jumps off the top of the monkey bars. He, of course, lands face down, breaks out all his front teeth. Screams, chaos, emergency room trip, the whole 9 yards. And of course, the parents, get the phone call and show up and proceed to blame Peter for the fact that his younger brother decided to try and be an albatross. Welcome to the world of the conservative Christian sane person. We're surrounded by people who think that if they tie a towel around their neck and wish really hard, they'll turn into Superman and fly off the roof. And we're the ones standing there. We're the only ones standing there with a megaphone going, this is, no, don't. It's not working. It never works. And you're going to hurt yourself. You're going to kill yourself. And the society solution is to try and take away the megaphone. And it's not like they're getting ready. They're already jumping. These people are going out, getting their dicks chopped off, getting tits sewn on, dressing up all pretty, being a pretty princess, going out and finding out that it didn't fix what was wrong with them. And they go home, their brains are percolating in more hormones than a legion of cheerleaders, and they end up killing themselves. So basically we've got dozens of people jumping off the building every day, and every inch of sidewalk is covered with little round piles of wet raspberry jam. But we're not allowed to say anything because it might hurt your feelings. No, Peter, you don't want to hurt Fudge's feelings. He wants to be a bird. That's so sweet. Don't you may not like it, but my ground holds the same on homosexuality. Look, still the same results. The people that oh man, I can read you a chapter verse on the stats, on the results of on what the homosexual community is actually like, on the disease rate, on the death rate, on the suicide rate, on the rates for psychological and emotional problems. And even with a society that indulges them every step of the way and pats them on the back and tells them, what a wonderful lifestyle they have, they're still not happy. They're not healthy. They're not whole. A Christian would make the first point is that there's a Jesus-shaped hole in their heart. I think that might be a trite explanation, but everybody has that missing part where Christ should be. So I don't think that it's particularly special for the homosexual, but they do have they have a serious problem, and they don't want to fix it. Because that would be hard. That would be difficult. That would involve self-control. That would involve denying oneself what it desires. Look, we all have, there's excuses, but I feel the sexual desire for other men or other women so deeply, and it feels so natural, it feels so right. Yes. The same could be said by a drug addict snorting cocaine. It feels fantastic. In fact, they've found out drug addiction has a serious neurochemical basis. The reason that for many people that they slide into alcoholism or drug addiction so easily is because it has to do with the serotonin uptake in their brains. Up until that point, they've been basically the serotonin uptake process has been idling it low, and then they take drugs or do alcohol for drink alcohol for the first time, and vroom. All those receptors are triggered by the drug or by the alcohol or whatever, and away they go. In fact, that's why because making getting drunk or getting stoned makes them feel in a way whole for the first time. But these, it's same story. We all have urges, desires, impulses that we recognize have to be tempered, controlled, or abstained from completely for our own well-being and for the well-being of those around us and for society at large. Sexual urges are no different. And if it has been determined that a certain behavior, that a certain behavior is immoral, wicked, and harmful, then it should be discouraged vehemently and abstained from. And the homosexual lifestyle ticks off all those points. The so-called, I hate calling it a lifestyle. It's a behavior. It's not a life. It's not a lifestyle. It's a behavior. Well, I gave it up, and I tried to give it up, and I still feel these urges. Well, guess what? The alcoholic who gives up alcohol still feels a thirst for alcohol, probably for the rest of their lives. But they abstain because they know the harm it does. If we, how insane would it be if we treated smoking the way we treated sex? And yes, sex is dangerous. There's a little fact that people don't like to remember. Smokers would start applying to, to have their smoking labeled a, alternate lifestyle. Cancerphilic, I suppose. And they would throw a fit whenever they posted a no smoking sign calling you a smokophobic. Oh, we have medical proof that smoking is bad for you. Well, surprise, surprise. We've known for thousands of years that promiscuity is bad for you. We've known that illicit sex, running around, extramarital sex, is a bad deal for you in a dozen different ways. We've known for the longest time that homosexual lifestyle, that homosexuality is physically, emotionally, mentally, medically bad for you. Want to have a fun time? Look this up. Gay bowel syndrome. It's what they used to call it in the 70s. They're not allowed to use that term anymore because it's politically incorrect. Medically correct, but politically incorrect. Homosexual men would come into doctors all the time with with a literal litany list of shall we say, rectal and bowel problems. And in the instances of venereal diseases right through the roof, several 100% higher than in the regular community, in the mainstream community, even in the promiscuous heterosexual community. Here's one I don't like to be reminded of. The AIDS virus does not transmit very well through heterosexual sex. Anal sex, particularly male-to-male anal sex, it jumps the gap real easy. Again, several 100% times more easily. And that's not, even leaving out things like HIV, syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia, herpes. There are other physical conditions that come along with the sodomite lifestyle. I won't even begin to describe them because some of you are probably eating right about now. Just barfing on your keyboard would, be bad for it. Am I offending you? Am I upsetting you? Am I depressing you? Am I getting your indignation up? Am I getting your indigestion up? Hey, well, welcome to the world where we wander into this topic. Why are we on this topic? Because it's being shoved in our faces through every venue. Gay people are gratuitously overrepresented in our entertainment. You will not find a TV show where there isn't at least one gay character in it, openly portrayed as gay, or a gay couple. Even though the percentage of actual gay people in society is Oh, I think the last count was like less than 2%. And this was from surveys that were taken in the middle of major cities. So keep that in mind. That 2% is a regional overstatement. This is why you see the LGBTQ, XBY, BBB, WTF, BBQ. Why they keep adding a new syllable? Why they keep adding a new letter to this word every other week? Because they have to lump all these deviancies together, and split hairs on some of to make it look like there are more, to make it look like their community, quote unquote, is bigger than it actually is. Gays and lesbians, okay, homosexuals, bisexuals, what do we, split some hairs some more. And LGBTQ, queer. Last time I checked, queer was the same as homosexual. So they repeat themselves 3 times: gays, lesbians, and queers. Like I said, trying to make themselves look like a bigger group than they are. Anyway, why are we talking about this? Because it's everywhere. It's it's in every TV show, and it's more and more. It's being pushed into children's shows. They desperately want the next generation to be used to the idea of happy little gay men and happy little gay women running around. If you don't think that's predatorial, I remind you, they don't reproduce, they recruit. Is that a horrible way to put it? Well, it's a horrible thing. Yes, this is why they made a push into the public schools. One of the first, this came out. This came out when they started. When they were back when this first started, when gays and lesbians started going into school, high school sex ed classes and offering their own advice. Among other things, one of the things they were caught out at is telling young men and women, the gay guy was telling young men, if you're uncertain about your sexuality, find an older gay male to help you out with it. I'm not lying, and I'm not exaggerating, and I'm not making it up. They want a steady supply of veal, is what they want. And we've already got the pedophiles making a push, using the same, the gay community, trampled down the path for them, and now the pedophiles are marching up right behind them. And yes, child molestation. Again, horrible, disproportionate representation. The number of same-gender cases of child sexual abuse and sexual assault greatly outstrips the male on female or the female on male numbers. One of the things that in all this talk about the you remember the outrage over the molesting priests in the Catholic Church. What sort of seemed to slip everybody's mind was that it was priests, older men with younger boys. almost exclusively. Well, the part of the reason was is that uh, one of the reasons they assumed it was is because a lot of these priests were had homosexual tendencies and decided to slip on into the church, well, for cover. This is, you know, this is the horrible truth of life. And I will be excoriated for saying it, for saying any of the things I've been saying. It won't be about whether what I said was true or not. It won't be about whether I was, it'll be all about how they didn't like it. And we live in an era where people are treating the entire the past 3 or 4 generations have been about people who just if they don't like something, they scream, cry, throw something at it, then go run off in a corner to cry. They don't know how to debate like civilized people. They don't know how to concede when the facts are against them. All they know is what they learned when they were being dropped off in the 90s and the thousands by their mothers in the daycare center. That the easiest way to get what you want was throw a tantrum until the caretaker gave you what you wanted. It's the same old song and dance. Whether you think that this is the first society to let sexual licentiousness, which I'm talking about sexual, just heterosexual promiscuity, as well as homosexual activity, pedophilia, and all the other just rampant moral illnesses. You think we were the first society to let this happen, or were the first society that paid the price? Look at our society. We literally shut our country down for the sake of a virus that has a lower death toll than the bog standard annual flu. We shut our country down. We've got people running around trying to run businesses with surgical masks over their face. The people handing out hand gel like it's the new fad, All for a virus that kills fewer people than the flu. But when AIDS came out, when HIV came out, a virus transmitted through bodily fluids, sexually, yes, but also, say, through an open cut. We had a virus come out that is 100% incurable, 100% lethal, and is contagious. It can spread through bodily fluids, and we would not exercise the same restraints we show when one of the kids has chicken pox. If we had if we had reacted to HIV the way we're reacting to the COVID virus, yeah, it would have still been a farce. But if we had reacted to the COVID virus the way we do to a serious contagious, any other serious contagious disease, quarantine, finding the vectors, quarantining those who are infected, and yes, prohibiting activity that spread it, then HIV would be a footnote in the history books right alongside the Spanish flu. And with a fraction of the death toll. But instead, we were so addicted to our sexual licentiousness, our anything goes attitude, that we were willing to let people die, and not only die, but die slowly and horribly, rather than do what was necessary to prevent the plague of the 20th century from eating its way through our society. We weren't showing these people consideration or compassion or understanding or enlightenment. We weren't being progressive. We were letting spoiled children play with a live cobra. And then pretending we didn't understand when the child fell down with a bite on its arm. We just don't know what happened. And what was our solution? To tell the children to play with a cobra a little more carefully so it didn't bite as much. That's not compassion. That's not enlightenment. It's the ultimate in sexual selfishness. Because as long as we let them do whatever they wanted, hey, we could get away with doing whatever we wanted, right? If you really love someone, if you really love someone, you don't let them destroy themselves. Letting them wallow in depravity and march through the streets celebrating it. That's not enlightenment or compassion. That's letting them destroy themselves. That's letting them destroy others. You're just a homophobe. No, I'm not afraid. Well, actually, it disturbs me greatly, and I'd be seriously alarmed if I saw a bunch of angry gay people coming down the road, getting ready to beat the crap out of any straights that told them something they didn't like to hear. Homophobe. That's wish fulfillment on their part. People weren't afraid of homosexuals, they were appalled by it. Grossed out by it. Angered by it. Offended by it. Afraid of it? No. And it wasn't long before homosexuals would get, a church tries to, in California, a church tries to hold a church rally, a church, uh, brain skipped a groove. They tried to hold a service, a church service with specials, with guest speakers where they would talk about the issue of homosexuality, and what the Bible had to say about it. And a mob, a literal rioting mob, gathered outside the church, tried to block people from going inside, physically assaulted people, threatened to burn the church down, tore down the flag they had out front. They had the American flag and they tore them both down, ran up the gay pride flag instead. Just by the numbers, harassment and persecution, because these people in the church dared to tell them what you are doing is wrong. It is a sin and it is killing you. Those people, as bitter, you want to get pissed off at somebody, give them some advice and have them throw it back in your face. Love is, loving another person isn't about feeling, warm, mushy compassion. You can be mad at you, be pissed at them. You can be just furious with them, disgusted with them. But you're you're still trying to stop them from doing something that will harm them and those that they love. That's more an act of love than running up to them, gushing at them, and giving them huggy wuggies. I will. I don't pretend to be lovey-dovey. I'm terrible at lovey-dovey. I'm bad at it. Maybe I argue with people. Maybe I argue with people and start doing it out of a sense of my own self-aggrandizement. I'm right, you're wrong. But in the end, I'm still trying to argue for something that is to their betterment. As one man put it, love is a noun. Love is a verb, not a noun. It's measured in the deeds you do, not in the feelings you have. If I hear somebody has taken, if I hear somebody has taken my advice and turned their life around, what I feel? I feel great relief. If I really hated these people, if I really hated the people I get mad at, if I really hated the people that get mad, I would celebrate whenever they ignored me and went off and train wrecked themselves. I won't deny I get a certain amount of schadenfreude when people come back and they've set their own hair on fire and they come back with a bad sunburn on top of their heads. That was dumb now, wasn't it? Hurt like heck, didn't it? Bet you feel stupid. Not gonna do that now again, are you? Nah. I look at people that won't turn, that just barrel straight towards a cliff, and I'm like, This is the sin of Jonah. You know what I'm saying? Jonah. I mean, that was a man. You got to understand. Now, the story of Jonah. He was told to go to Nineveh and preach to those people there. Most people don't know the full story of Nineveh. Of course, most of the Bible stories, you got to remember, they were written to people who knew who knew the history of the time and the place and everything else. A lot of details that weren't handed down. The story of Nineveh is that most people don't understand that the Nineveh was populated entirely by people. The people of Nineveh persecuted the Jews at that time, tormented. They were one of the. They made life hell on earth for the Jews, for the people of Israel, and the depravities they got up to were monstrous. Jonah had a lot of very solid reasons for hating those people. He didn't want them to have a chance at redemption. He wanted them to pay the price. He wanted to see punishment. And we all have that same problem. We all want to see punishment. Probably, the difference is that a wise person recognizes that punishment comes when there's no repentance. We want to see, if we're smart, we want to see repentance before we want to see punishment. Because it's what we received. But he fled. He rowed off in a boat. He got thrown overboard, swallowed by a fish, spit back up on shore, ran to Nineveh, preached. Scared to everlasting bejesus at everybody there. You gotta figure it made for a heck of an entrance, giant fish swims up shore, Harth! And a prophet lands on the sand. And word probably got there ahead of him. Giant fish spit a prophet up on the shore. Here he comes. Then he come running through the gate and he started preaching. And then afterwards, he went up on a hill outside of Nineveh. After preaching for 3 days, he went out and sat on a hill. He wasn't hoping for conversion. He wanted to see that city burn. He was sitting there up on that hill because that was the best viewpoint. And while he was sitting there, God made a vine grow up, a gourd vine grow up that provided him shade. And then a worm killed the gourd. The plant died, and he lost his shade. And Jonah got so PO'd at everything that he literally passed out from heat stroke. And God waited for him to wake up, and he woke up. Is it right for you to be angry about the worm and the gourd? He's, very much, even unto death. Yes. And he said, you had pity for the gourd. Where was your pity for these people? These people, this city is full of innocent children who are too young to know their right hand from their left. And also all these animals that live there too. What did they do wrong? And it doesn't say anything more in the book, what happened, what Jonah did after that. But that was the point of the lesson. But this is how this is how it's starting to feel now. Jonah passed the popcorn because it's reached a point they're not listening, and they're attacking anybody who tells them differently, trying to destroy them. Like I said, there was a time He's told his apostles, if your message was rejected, to leave that city, wipe the dust off your shoes, shake the dust off your shoes, because if they've rejected this message, then there's no hope left for them. We're not that far gone yet, but not by, we're not even close to the mess some of those old biblical nation states were in. Not by a long shot. We were bad enough. Bad is bad enough. But this is one of the things that I think about the COVID virus, the Wuhan virus, the Chinese virus, Kung flu, whatever you want to call it. I think this is a dry run. I think that the real reason, I think the real reason that the government is responding with such extremism to the COVID virus is because this is a dry. It's not as nearly as dangerous as the flu, but it spreads rapidly. And it's hazard enough to justify taking measures. This is a dry run for when something really horrible escapes out of a Chinese lab someplace. And yeah, it did come out of a Chinese lab. You know how they know they came out of a Chinese lab? Because the Chinese labs, the workers and the scientists there, the lab workers, they multiple times over the years, they've been arrested for selling used lab animals at the wet markets in Wuhan. Gee, what a surprise that this virus, completely out of nowhere, suddenly starts tearing China a new butthole and spreads to the rest of the world. But this is a dry run. They've established that yes, they can sort of get everybody on board and have them wearing masks and quarantining and social distancing, and they're taking notes and they're preparing for the next time. And I think that it's God's mercy that it was that this time around it was a fairly mild pandemic. There's a difference. An epidemic is when it spreads rapidly through like a particular area. A pandemic is something that it just starts popping up randomly all over the globe, seemingly randomly. Second reason I say that this is a test run, I think that its providence is that this virus is coming through. It's shaking things out. A lot of social problems that we have not been facing directly, we're refusing to face directly, are the nails are getting rattled loose by this thing. The fact that I find it really interesting. One of the things I find really interesting about this whole thing is that all those people that a year ago we were, people were sneering at as unskilled labor. These people who are working minimum wage and trying to go on strike to get, just to get a raise up to, rock bottom. And people responded, well, and people responded by calling them unskilled labor and saying they didn't deserve to be paid more and all this other stuff. And I love this, A soldier in the battlefield doesn't make $15 an hour. A paramedic doesn't make $15 an hour. And I'm like, a fireman doesn't make $15 an hour. And I'm like, I'm not hearing an argument here. What I'm hearing is a jackass bragging that they pay their EMTs and firemen and soldiers about as much as a burger flipper. Try again. This is a terrible argument for why why not to give people on the bottom rung a raise. And I'll repeat this again. I'll repeat this again as many times as it takes until they start saying it on the news every Saturday night. And when they start saying it on the weekly night news, maybe I'll stop saying it myself. A little reminder: minimum wage today is $7.50. Federal minimum wage is $7.50 an hour. Minimum wage back in 1964. $70, $80, $90, $2,000, $210. That's about 55 years ago. 55 years ago. Minimum wage 55 years ago in 1964 was $1.25 an hour. Adjusted for inflation, $15 an hour. I love the fact that they assume that just because you work minimum wage, you can't do math. Because that's what it comes down to. The people working minimum wage today, working the same jobs, mopping floors, scrubbing toilets, emptying trash, cooking food, running cash registers. All these people are doing the same work that their grandparents did for half the pay. Exactly half the pay. And their grandparents are calling them spoiled and privileged for wanting to make the same money that they did doing the same work. That flies all over me. Yeah, big whoop-de-doop. There's a bunch of young people today who are spoiled and privileged and uncontrolled. But the problem is, they got shitty music and shitty attitudes and everything else. But hey, if somebody's working and doing their job, I don't care what they're doing. And I love this. I love the fact that people who last year who were being called expendable and unskilled workers, like they were disposable, are now being called essential workers. It's starting to piss me off. Think about it. You're working a cash register. You're being exposed to, you got rubber gloves. I went to the Walmart today to pick up my prescriptions. And the cashier had surgical gloves and a mask on. I was walking around and looking around. Everybody's wearing surgical. I felt like I was on the back lot of MASH. and these people, they're running these registers, being exposed to hundreds of people a day who may or may not be carrying that dang virus. And they're doing it for what? Minimum wage? Well, not at Walmart. Walmart pays a couple of dollars above minimum wage, I believe, starting wage. I forget what the starting wage at Walmart is. It's actually better than minimum wage. Give them that, give them credit where it's due. But And these people are coming out, all this praise sounding. Oh, you're so brave, and you're so heroic for keeping the system going. And all this praise is coming from people who are barricaded behind 3 layers of of housing and behind their glass doors at home, and with about 13 layers of antibacterial soap on their skin. And one lady was writing, starting to get to her. She's out there. She's an essential worker. She's a cashier. She got hundreds and hundreds of people handing, she's passing by her daily, but she's got to be there and risk her health and maybe even her life, while her boss is waiting this out at his vacation home. Yeah, that's going to cause some rifts right there. That's just going to cause a few issues. You know what I'm saying? Can't imagine why. Maybe I advocate for the younger generation. Maybe I advocate for millennials so much because I'm too emotionally immature myself. I mean, I'm a perfect example of somebody who, forget peaking at 16. I never quite reached a peak, and sort of stalled out emotionally development-wise at 16. Has been coasting for the past couple of decades. But anyway, I'm just shy of 50 years old, and I'm so tired of hearing these things. Especially from boomers. Boomers, the most overrated generation in ages. We've got photos of Woodstock. We know what you were up to. Quit playing. You got boomers talking about, when I was a boy, I worked my way through college. Yeah, when you were a boy, back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, tuition was a little bit lower. Tuition has gone up 500% in most colleges, and that's a lowball figure. Meanwhile, wages have not only stagnated but dropped. You were making $15 an hour. You were making $15 an hour at your part-time job. Yeah, you could work and college was 1/5 as expensive as it is today. Oh yeah, hell yeah, you could work your way through college. Hell, you could get a job. You could quit college, get a job, get married, buy a house, buy a car, have 2 kids and a dog before you were 30. Give me an everlasting break. Meanwhile, the price of everything is going. You're running around with I love this one. Occupy Wall Street was crap, but the argument. Oh, look at them. They've got cell phones. Oh, they're poor. A cell phone is basically life support in the 21st century. Okay. That's like saying, oh, they've got a horseless carriage. They're not poor. That's like going to one of these houses out in West Virginia, where they've got they've got 3 cars. They've got 3 cars. They're rich. Yeah, but they're all up on blocks. Trust me, I've met some truly awful people in my life. I've been truly awful people in my life, but I've met some real customers, some real workers, some real humdingers of people that you look at them, what the heck, and one of those look at them and go, what the heck's wrong with you kind of people. Oh, I've met a few of them. I'm one of them these days, but. There's one family down in Lincoln County. Every time, this was, the housing committee, whatever they call the, once these people, that they didn't clean. They just lived in a house until it was so filthy and broken down it was unlivable. Didn't even make a token effort to clean, and then these social workers would come in and say, "Oh, this is terrible. You have 2 children. You can't live like this," and move them into a new house somewhere in the county, and the whole process would start all over again. I think they had gone through 3 houses by the time I had been around that area, and there were people out there that third, fourth generation welfare handouts. I kid you not. Had one boy in our church. I asked him. Well, I asked him, talking to him about what kind of, future he wanted, what kind of career he thought he was going to get into, what kind of job he wanted, what did he want to be when he grow up. And the kid looked at him, "Oh, I don't want to be anything. I got my, he had a plate in his head, metal plate, and so I don't need nothing. I get a crazy check from the government." That's what they call them in those areas, Social Security checks. For health reasons, they call them crazy checks. And that was his attitude. That was the attitude of a lot of people. Just tragic. And there you go. There you go. So I'm saying, I've seen fire and I've seen rain. I've seen all sides of it, but at the very least. But I don't see the older generation doing all that great of a job getting off their duffs and working with the younger generation. The older generation, and I know enough about what the older generation got up to know that they're full of crap, too. The boomer generation enjoyed unparalleled prosperity because they were a post-war generation. By and large, you had the thing with Vietnam, but that was cranking the economic engine too. And during their generation, it just they set off things that are still rolling downhill and picking up speed. Anyway, here we are. I say, in certain ways, the younger generation is spoiled. They've been raised tragically to believe that all they have to do to get the world to bend their way is to throw a tantrum at it. Their wishes are more important than reality as it lies on the ground. They come up there, they look in their pants, they know dang well what gender they are. They come up there, "I sexually identify as," and then they give you a 5-hyphen answer as to what their sex or gender is. As if the two were separated. And, that's not going to do them in good stead when the rubber meets the road. But at the same time, you've got this generation that's coming up, and all the things that the boomer generation took for granted and still takes for granted do not exist anymore. that powerhouse economy. The economy was doing fairly good under Trump right now, but it was nothing compared to what it was like, coming after World War II, and in even through the Korean and Vietnam Wars. I mean, we put a man on the moon with a little better computing than a slide rule. So, you know, we were going great guns, and it looked like we weren't going to stop. And then we got a bunch of people in power that kept building and building and building and adding to the welfare state. And we had a bunch of people got into power that, and then we got our economy hitched. Yoked even to the Chinese government, and then then they took us off the gold standard and put us on fiat currency. All the crimes that Nixon committed, that's the one that he should have been shot for. And it just basically laid the groundwork for an inevitable decline of this country. And every generation since then has been bearing the load of it. I've harped on this before, but again, until things change, I'll keep talking about it. Yeah. The fact that we live in the fact that we have a graduated tax system and all these other systems. You got a bunch of people coming out of the woodwork now trying to say, just because they pay more taxes doesn't mean that it's unfair. And, doing their best to snow job people and convince them that an unfair tax system is somehow more fair than a fair one. Just bullcrap. And prosperity is a matter of perspective and attitude. There's a guy came to America back in the 19, like in near the end of the Roaring Twenties. When the Great Depression set in. I forget exactly when the Great Depression started. He came to me. He became a millionaire. And they asked him, "How did you succeed so greatly when everything was going to pieces around you?" And he looked at it. He said, "I didn't know there was a depression." He just basically strode in, land of opportunity, and refused to accept the idea. Considering what country, whatever country he came from was probably 10 times worse off than America in the middle of a depression. You can still succeed. You can still prosper. You can, and even if you don't become a millionaire, you can still have a rich, meaningful, content life in Christ. Well, that's way more important than that's way more important than anything else. You could be Bill Gates, but if if your soul isn't in Jesus' hands, what's the point? it's I've been a Christian most of my life. I made a profession of faith when I was about 5 years old. Asked Christ into my heart as a child, and when all the troubles and all the pain and all the doubt and all the tears and all the suffering and all the struggles, it's still, I look at it and I go, I would rather have this than have whatever it is that atheists think they have. Because they haven't got, they haven't, they literally haven't got a hope in hell. They have no one to call on, no God to call on, no heaven waiting for them on the other side of the grave. And if they're honest with themselves, a philosophy that basically tells them that their existence is just an accidental blip. And that they won't even, they don't even have heaven. They don't even have hell. They have their hope is, their best option is to blip out of existence into oblivion, and I'm like, what kind of hope is that? What kind of life is that? And they try to pretend that there isn't consequences in this life for not having anyone to answer in the next one. Because sooner or later, push it far enough, an atheist will have to say, nothing I do matters. So why am I restraining myself? I wouldn't want that, nothing in the, not all the tea in China, What does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his soul? Heavy stuff, I know. When you start talking about issues of right or wrong, that's it's inevitably where you go. Because this is ridiculous. All these people telling you don't need to, you don't need a God to have a moral code. No, you just need one if you want one that works. Because if you don't believe that if you don't believe that there's anyone to be accountable to, then right and wrong merely become a matter of mob rule. Whoever has the most sticks and can beat everybody else into getting in line. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just falling asleep here, trying to. My mind just mulling things over. I'm sorry I haven't updated any comics lately. It's been a while. Updated a couple of fan fictions, but pardon me. But pardon me, boys, at the Chattanooga choo-choo. Boom, boom, ba-da-dum, ba-da-da-da-da. I was born in Chattanooga, Tennessee. There's supposed to be a curse on. There's supposed to be an Indian curse on the area that anybody who was born in that area around where Chattanooga is will die there. Nonsense, of course. Makes for an interesting story, though. My father's convinced there's a witch's coven up on top of Lookout Mountain out there. I don't know if there's any cultists or witches covens out there, but I seriously doubt it. Because he also believes that somebody performed a ritual satanic sacrifice of a child out in front of a movie theater down there. And I've checked the records. No. It's an urban myth. Complete urban myth. Now, what is, you have to understand, my father was a student at Tennessee Temple University out there in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And he and a friend of his went up on that mountain, just looking around, so you got, like a lot of park areas and stuff up there. And he went out there, and they got out there, it started getting dark. And he claims to have seen, among other things, he claims to have seen a black dog. And I'm not talking just a regular black dog. I'm talking, the one of those ghost dogs, a grim, as they call it in folklore. They knew it was unnatural because they looked back, they saw it, and it was walking several feet off the ground. And he also, he claimed to have seen all sorts of things up on that hill while he and his friend were up there knocking around. And they saw some things that freaked him out. And they hauled arse, got out of there, and looking back out of the back of the car, he was convinced that there was something that had been chasing them, and all this other, all this stuff, And he's my dad. I believed him, of course. He was my father. I believe that he thinks he saw something, but I also know a few things about him. One, he and his friend, he didn't have a brother. He and his friend, both students at Tennessee Temple University, and that week they had just had around a revival service week, where they have, service after service, day after day after day for a week. It's one of these things they call a revival, but if you aren't, by the time it's done, you feel half dead. You're worn out, and the sort of preachers down there, we're talking real fire and brimstone types, So so they'd been through a parade of at least 4 or 5 real fire and brimstone sermons for the previous rest of the week. And I also know for a fact that both he My father is blind in one eye. He still had the eye. He lost the eye. A couple of years ago, a little nasty little accident. But he had the eye for all these years, and he could sort of see out of it. He gave him blinding headaches, and he could see clearly out of one eye, but the other eye, just a fog of everything. And it gave him all sorts of headaches because it had problems, and well, anyway. And his friend was one of these people who was legally blind without his glasses. Coke bottle time. And they were out there up on a mountain. So basically, you had two college-age Bible college students who had spent the previous week being, let's say it, gassed up by a bunch of preachers. And they were going up and basically investigating what was the local equivalent of a haunted mountain with one good eye between them. Yeah, so color me skeptical. But God help me if I whenever I hinted, Dad, you were blind in one eye and you don't see too well out of the other one, and your best friend was seeing the world through a couple of Coke bottoms. You were up there in the dark, and you could barely see where you're going. You admit yourself, and you had spent you had spent a week alternatively being gassed up by fire and brimstone preachers, and hearing stories about the ghosts and witches and demon worshippers up on this mountain. So, is there a possibility you just might have seen something and your imagination ran away?
I know what I saw. You're doubting my word.
And off to the races, That's always fun. Excuse me, I'm eating cheesy puffs. But, yeah. That's the thing I'm sure, I believe that there are angels and demons and powers and principalities and so forth that move through this earth. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus. I believe in His heavenly host, and not much room for doubt. You know what I'm saying? Not much room for skepticism, rather. But, and again, this is a big but. All these people that claim to have had, the Christians especially, claim to have had encounters with, the forces of darkness and the powers of evil, and they're supposed to have, they claim to have exorcised demons, and I'm like, you've got pagans that claim the same thing, that they exorcised a demon, and you've got people out there, well, quite frankly, I find it interesting that if demons and their worshippers are running around, and and these occultists supposedly have magical. But well, I find it interesting that it's so camera shy. Very, very interesting that these demons who are supposedly trying to influence humanity and so on and so forth. Yet you can't. Nobody's ever captured one. Conclusively on camera, and all the supposed photographs of ghosts and demons and such are well, pretty obvious fakes or easily faked, and it's interesting how these miracles never seem to occur anywhere somebody with a camcorder is. You know. Do miracles occur? I'll say it straight up. I don't know. Now, the Bible gives records of all sorts of miracles that happened back in Bible times. And it also gives prophecies about miracles that are going to happen in the end times. But there seems to be a rather difficult to explain gap in the middle. And it's interesting that all these reports of miracles have gone pretty much the same. All the reports of modern miracles have pretty much gone the same way as modern reports of UFO sightings or of Bigfoot. We live in a time where literally everybody has a camera, a video camera in their pocket, and we're not catching the paranormal at work. It's a little vexing. I think, of course, the author of Dilbert made an interesting point. There was one strip where Scott Adams, he wrote the strip. There was one strip where Dilbert was building a device. He was inventing a device. He building it, and Dogbert comes in and looks at it and says, "What is that?" He says, "Yeah, I'm building a device to detect paranormal activity." And he said, "But but what's your baseline? You have no idea what it is you're looking for. This is like looking in. This is like using a metal detector to hunt your sock drawer for unicorns." I think paranormal investigation is a legitimate field, but I think the people that are engaged in it, regardless of their belief system, they need to back up at least 2 or 3 steps and start conducting it from a stance of they need to start over from square one, if you follow what I'm saying. Starting over, first of all, from a stance of true objective neutrality. You're not getting that. What you're getting is people who start TV shows where they run around in the dark with infrared cameras. How do they know that ghosts show up on infrared cameras? They don't know. They're all using the same instruments. They're supposed to detect paranormal activity because that's what other previous paranormal detectives used to detect paranormal activity. So they have no idea whether the instruments are working right or not, or whether they're detecting something else entirely. Like, I don't know, static electricity. Half the problem is that everybody, nobody, everybody has a vague general idea of what paranormal means, and they don't have a solid definition of what it is they're looking for. They're trying to investigate a phenomenon so that they can research it, but they don't have a solid definition of what the phenomenon is or what it's supposed to be. Interesting thing. Archaeologists, Egyptologists to be particular, they were doing research into the magicians who worked in the pharaoh's court. And it was interesting. They discovered some very interesting things about the magicians' quarters. Among other things, there were tunnels dug, about the size of about a foot square, that were dug through the walls in various places, and went around corners, little foot wide hidden passageways, basically. And if you spoke into one end of them, your voice would pop out of, well, seemingly thin air dozens of rooms away. One of the paranormal mysteries of Egypt explained. Well, that's the thing of it. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he never existed. I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. Even if that was his agenda, to convince people that he didn't exist, which, considering all the occult people who supposedly call on him for power, he seems to have a little fan club going on the side at the same time, and how do I put this? The best the best escape artist ever still would falter under focused scrutiny. What I'm saying is that if the paranormal exists, if angels and demons and everything and all that other, and spirits and so on so forth do exist, which I believe they do, and in fact I believe that there is a lot more in heaven and earth than is mentioned in our philosophy, so to speak. I believe there are tremendous amounts of things about the world beyond the immediately observed that God never mentioned in the Bible, because they weren't of immediate concern to the purpose of the Bible, which was giving the message of Christ, and they weren't really of a concern to us. Well, basically what I'm saying is that regardless of their willingness to disappear from the public consciousness, there should still be footprints. even the stealthiest creature leaves a track. And you know the joke about tracks. Two scientists go out hunting in the woods, and they stumble across a set of tracks. And one of them says, "Oh, these are deer tracks. These are deer tracks. We're going to bag us a deer." And the other one looks at it and says, "No, no, 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 no. Those are bear tracks. If we're careful, we climb a tree, we can bag ourselves a bear." And they stood there arguing back and forth until the train finally came and ran them over. Saying that believing that the paranormal is, saying that the paranormal is undetectable to us, that it's invisible, that it's hiding for some reason. Saying that the paranormal does not leave, has suddenly stopped. Saying that the paranormal has suddenly stopped interacting with the living world. No reason, no explanation, and that it's going to, it's not going to interact with the world until the end times. That it's going on hiatus for some reason. I can't believe that. I can't believe that. Can't bring myself to. And I believe God made a universe of reason and logic and sanity and rules, and that even the supposed paranormal and supernatural answer to some sort of rules. And that those rules can be, that they can be examined and analyzed like any other universal constants. Because I have a fundamental problem with the idea that God suddenly got bashful after the book of Revelations was written. That he would spend thousands and thousands of years making himself concretely visible in various ways to humanity, and that his enemy, the devil, did the same thing, but to a lesser degree and in bad parody. And that suddenly this all just stopped, just turned off. And won't start up again until the end times return. The rapture happens and the end times start up. That seems fantastically inconsistent. Well, that's the reason it probably freaks you out is you got these people that are paranormal researchers and supposed psychics. They're starting at it from a a secular paranormalist worldview, which is to say, a New Ager worldview. I think that is biasing how they observe any phenomenon. I find myself wondering if there are any Christian researchers into reports of the abnormal. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, and that's the point. Nobody knows. I think that the paranormal researchers have the same problem that atheistic evolution that evolutionists have. That they are only going to look at the evidence through the lens of secular agnosticism or atheism. This is why, when confronted with arguments or simple logical arguments against evolution as a theory, as a feasible theory, they kick and buck so hard. If they see anything that suggests to them the idea that God exists, they toss it out as observer error. That's not rational or logical or scientific. It's very human, sad to say, but it's not remotely scientific. Excuse me. Drifted off again. Okay. Let's see here. And the music stopped again. Oh, there we go. Hate it when it does that. Let's see. Hit all the talking points I had here. I only got to seem to have 2 or 3 at a time, and they all seem to repeat themselves. Roe versus Wade was an incorrect decision, Clarence Thomas says in New Opinion. No freaking duh. Back when they made it, I read some of the quotes from that decision. When they made the Roe versus Wade decision, they openly admitted, we have no idea when, we have no way to determine when human life starts. But we're going to legalize abortion anyway. If you don't know when a life starts, you err on the side of moral caution. Good night. Oh, such a waste and struggle. So I'm drifting. I started it at just a little bit after 1. It's now 3:48 in the morning. I was hoping for a little lighter fare today or tonight. Finally managed to get to the doctor yesterday, get a prescription for antibiotics, and got my nice statin. Even managed to get to the store and buy a few munchies, including a whole roasted chicken. Roasted chicken, lemon pepper. So I've eaten well. I've actually eaten like a pig. I went through almost an entire box of Rice Krispie treats. And a package of Twizzlers. Big family-sized pack of Twizzlers. The filled kind, the sweet, the sweet and sour cherry lemonade filled. Ooh, pardon. I also got the chocolate Twizzlers. The chocolate Twizzlers, made with real Hershey cocoa. Don't bother. Don't bother. Maybe if they'd been filled with chocolate, but these, it's like eating a chocolate flavored rubber tire. Just not a yummy, not a yummy experience. It's just not yummy. It doesn't do the yummy nums. But there you have it. Yeah, snacks and sweets. I got some milk. I was a good boy and bought something healthy, so I can eat my Cocoa Puffs. But getting milk. That's. Oh man, it was best day really, because she dropped me. She drove me to the doctor's office. And it was comfortable. Even though I was sitting on a plastic chair in between the front seats and facing backwards, it was a comfortable ride, and I didn't have to struggle to get in and out of the van. And I saw my doctor and got my prescriptions taken care of, and turned out my legs are not no infections. That's good, and got my prescription and went to Walmart and got my prescription, and I had 15 minutes while they were filling one of the prescriptions. So I grabbed a few items, and I got some nice munchies here, and I even got some milk, and some roast chicken, and I have a happy tum tum. And I can't begin to tell you how much I have missed being able to roll around Walmart. I go there. I went there. I used one of their little carts, the little electric carts. I I- you know, uh, I ran that battery down here just 15 minutes, and the battery was almost dead. It went from 6 bars to one in no time flat. Hauling my heavy ass, I guess. But it brightens my whole day knowing that there is a transportation service that can carry me. Now I need to determine if they can do, can be transportation in other circumstances. Through my insurance, they will give me a ride, to the doctor's office or to the pharmacy or to probably to the dentist too. I'll have to ask about the dentist or the optometrist. My glasses could really use an update. And I can get out again. If they do taxi fare kind of stuff, hey, I can finally get out again. I can go places. Of course, I may wait until I have some sort of pants to where, all I have is these baggy sweat shorts, because I can get them over my huge legs, and I would need like MC Hammer giant balloon pants, and they'd be snug to fit over my legs, because I don't want to go out in public looking the way I do. Because oh my word, I saw my reflection in the front doors of the doctor's office, the glass doors, and it's horrifying. I look like I look like somebody you'd go to a circus carnival, you know, to see, just these big deformed legs, and there's just really nothing they can do for them. Hell, I'll go out in public in a robe if it reaches down to the ground, hides my legs. I don't care. No pride as far as clothing goes, but it's just I have my limits. And realizing what I look like out in public just a little too much to deal with. But everybody's got their own issues to deal with, their burdens to bear. Mine happen to be great big giant lumps of flesh below my knees. But, just gotta pray to Jesus for strength and grace. Here we are. But just having options, having a option, I feel freer than I have in a long time. Of course, naturally I find transportation just as right in the middle of the country being shut down. So I don't really have any place to go anyway. So yay. I've thought about getting a motor scooter. One of those little electric. I would have to go through all sorts of rigmarole with Social Security to try and get it covered because I could never afford to buy one of those things. And yeah, use the whole government thing to get it. Yeah. I'm seriously disappointing my libertarian objectivist Christian conservative background, but the thing of it is that I have no way to get it up in. I don't have a ramp or anything to my house. I have a steep, nasty little staircase. Well, it's a nice staircase. I'll take that back. It's not a nasty staircase. It's just nasty to try and get up and down it. It's a nice staircase. My dad built it for me. Replaced the ruined one that was out front. I need a new one in back, too. Of course, whoever puts that one out there, if I ever manage to get that one out there, they're going to have to go in there and chop down some small saplings that have grown up around through the steps and behind the back door. But, what else? Yeah, if I got one of those scooters, how would I get it out? I have to jump it out the front door like the Dukes of Hazzard. Yeehaw! Boom! Down to the street. I wouldn't have anywhere to go. It's just there's this. I live in a trailer park which has a loop, then a straight little road out to the freeway, and you can't exactly drive one of those old scooters down the freeway. So I don't know. You get a wheelchair accessible van to pick me up. I can drop me off someplace. I just go zippy up and down the mall, scaring the young folks. This is you in 20 years. That's right, Karen. Run from it. Jazzercise till you die. I'm in your future. Okay, let's see. Okay. Just watch a really adorable anime movie called Lou Over the Wall. I haven't heard of it. I'll have to look it up. Okay. Also, you read up on Coyote the other day. You were wondering if Izuku, before getting All Might's One for All, might have had a subtle quirk nobody could determine. Oh yeah, that's one of the popular. That's one of the popular ideas in My Hero Academia fan fiction. He has, it turns out that he has some exotic little quirk, literally speaking, that that nobody noticed. There's at least a couple of fan fictions where his quirk is actually super analysis, because the way in canon. He is constantly, he constantly analyzes heroes and villains and their quirks, how they work, what their shortcomings. He's got like dozens of handwritten notebooks. He started when he was just a little kid, and he's been writing them ever since, with all these details about powers and how they work, and heroes with their quirks and everything. His hero notebooks, Hero for the Future notebooks, and one of the stories, basically, it turns out that he has, a super analytical ability, and there are others where he's. Now there is one called Yesterday Upon the Stair. Yesterday Upon the Stair, where it turns out that he does have a quirk, but he doesn't tell anybody because. First of all, nobody will believe him. And second of all, it causes problems when they do, because he sees dead people. He sees ghosts. The restless, the restless dead, and the whole stories. The author even threw it in a gag. Oh, when I was about 6, I met one ghost who used to be a counselor, and he helped me work things out, and I helped him figure out that his wife wasn't divorcing him. That he, basically he guest spot by Bruce Willis from The Sixth Sense, and it makes for a very interesting twist on the makes lots of pebbles rolling downhill, lots of butterflies flapping their wings, kind of things, and among other things, one of the really big things is that instead of letting Aerie, now I don't know how many of you have seen season 4, but season 4, this was rough. This was a rough one, because Izuku starts his internship with Night Eye, and it turns out, and he and Lemillion are going on patrol. And this little girl comes running out of an alleyway and throws herself at him and clings to him and says, "Please don't let them take me back." And the guy claiming to be the girl's father comes out of the alley, and Lemillion quietly freaks out because the guy is a member of the mafia. He turns out he's the big bad of that season, and he has a terrifyingly powerful quirk, and he could have killed both of them without blinking. And in order to prevent catastrophe, they let he says he orders the girl to come back to him, and the little girl, to keep him from killing them, runs back to him and pretends everything was okay. Now, in Yesterday Upon the Stair, couple of little butterfly flaps. It isn't the head honcho. It's one of his underlings that's chasing the girl, and Izuku. The guy starts telling a lie about how he worked. I'm the kid's father, and Izuku's like, no, screw you, and beats a hasty retreat with the girl in his arms, and Nai is ripping him a new one later. He says, why did you you had no proof that this guy may be in the mafia. We know he's in the Yakuza, but you had no proof that it wasn't his daughter. But given all this crap for not backing off when Lemillion told him to, and Izuku just jumps up and starts yelling and rips him and just about rips him a new one and says, do you know how many little dead kids I've heard this story from? He said, do you know how many little dead kids I found in ditches and buried in shallow graves and other horrible things, and they tried to run away from their kidnapper, and the kidnapper would catch up with them. Oh, I'm just their father. Oh, I'm just their mother. I'm just their uncle. I'm just babysitting them. They're rambunctious, and all the grown-ups. Do you know how many times little kids have died because of that line? He said, I wasn't about to have another little dead girl haunt me. And Night Eye, for a miracle, shuts the hell up. Yesterday upon the stair. I did not write yesterday upon the. Oh, I wish I had. I wish I had the the talent. But yesterday upon the stair is basically it's a story about Izuku, who has his quirk is that he can talk to and see the dead. The dead can and his mother knows, but nobody else does, and he doesn't tell anybody because he can't prove it. And he doesn't want to be called crazy, and he's had a lot of terrifying encounters, especially a little 5-year-old kid seeing a ghost of somebody who's been run over by a train. You can imagine what that was like. And the thing of it is when he gets all for one, or rather one for all boosts his power, so that now he can infuse the ghosts with a little bit of his strength, make them visible, make them tangible. And the story goes, and the writer goes in very good detail about how Izuku, he deals with being a ghost whisperer, and people don't, and people have trouble understanding. Night Eye is always a jerk, no matter what he goes. You got somebody who can see the future, thinks that the future is immutable once he's seen it. He's going to have an attitude. But, Night Eye thinks that Izuku doesn't appreciate the importance of death. He thinks that, somebody dies, you don't care, because, you can still see them, afterwards. And he doesn't realize how wrong he is. You don't know what it is to experience loss. And Izuku's like, are you retarded? He said, what kind of people do you think become ghosts? And it finally sinks in with Night Eye. This kid isn't, playing, this kid isn't out there playing with Casper the Friendly Ghost. He's dealing with the angry, tragic, the lost souls that are clinging, who can't pass on because they suffered so much, or because there's some terrible unsolved thing that hasn't been done yet. He says, that Izuku has to deal with all these people who are, that these are people who have suffered the most tragic and horrible loss of all, and he has to comfort them and help them, or they never find peace. And even then, he has ghosts that have lingered around him for years. There's one little ghost girl in particular who has basically become like a sister to him. She's a spooky little thing. If you've ever read the webcomic Irma, E-R-M-A, look it up. It's a great read. It's basically, the idea is that the girl from The Ring, the movie The Ring, she climbed out of one TV set, fell in love with a mortal guy and married him, and now they have a little girl called Irma. And it's a fun read. It's a real fun read. And they have a lot of conflict because her family is all spirit beings from Asia, and he's a mortal guy. And family issues. But It's a fun read. It's really cute too. But anyway, this little ghost girl, and he's just, and dealing with people misunderstanding what he is, and what his burden is all part of his story. Okay, that joke, the joke around the joke about Izuku being a hydrokinetic because whenever he gushes tears. Yeah, I know that joke, but really, it's a cartoon convention. Give it a rest. There's one thing you gotta understand. One thing you gotta understand in Asian culture, at least Japanese culture, crying is not necessarily a sign of weakness. The concept of manly tears of pride or rage is a thing in Japanese culture. For instance, the manga version of the Hulk, the Japanese manga version of the Hulk, when Bruce Banner turns into the Hulk, is constantly crying because it's supposed to be that he is crying tears of rage. So it's not about, so in Asian culture, it's not about being weak or effeminate. Which I think they have that, they got one up on us in that regard. I drank all my soda pop. Bummer. Well, that's sad. Boo-hoo. It's a very popular thing to give Izuku, in fan fiction, to give Izuku some penny ante power, and then have him leverage it. Leverage the absolute crap out of it. No, I'm not introducing Riley into any fan fiction. I'm not going to be. I had no plans of putting Riley into any of my fan fictions, or of making a fan fiction centered around Riley. I wasn't going to do that, and I'm not going to. It was just a throwaway joke. The entities just asked you if she liked ponies. You people will take a threadbare nothing and run with it, won't you? It's supposed to be the idea is that, she's a little girl. Little girls like ponies, right? How about that one then? That was all. That was it. This was not an introduction to My Little Pony, My Little Pony Slaughterhouse 9. No. Come on. Sorry to disappoint. I'm going to turn that off. It seems to be bogging things down. You've never read any friends, and you've never read any fem fiction. Not even any of mine? I'm so hurt. Tragically, even. Boo-hoo. I tell you, I found a new hobby in Warcraft, in World of Warcraft. I take my my top level characters, and then I run them through various raids in the lower ranking raids. Mop the floor with all the bosses and the monsters. I'm facing down, the Fire Lord of the Fire Realm, and he's like, Titanic monster at the end of the time. Ah, now mortal you will perish, and I shoot him with a single arrow. Ah, thud. It's very gratifying. It's an easy way to rack up a lot of coin too, real quick. You take a level 120 hunter into a level 60 raid or dungeon, and you'll just sweep everything. It's slower if you use a melee fighter like a monk, or go with a character with ranged weapons. The hunter was basically designed around rapid fire. I can't wait until I get one of my little Vulpirans up to level 120, and then I can go back through all the dungeons. All these monsters. 20-foot tall, 50-foot tall, 100-foot tall monsters. Little Lee Fox with a bow and arrow. Doink! Arr! Boom! Hey, if you want to write a fiction about Riley in My Little Pony, go right ahead. Not my characters, just a random idea. Not my character. People are always asking me, do you mind if I write a fan fiction in the setting of your story, or with this or with that or with the other? I'm like, what am I going to say? It's fan fiction. We're all playing in each other's sandboxes. Go for it. Of course, I fully expect somebody to write a story deliberately. Sooner or later, somebody's going to write a story deliberately written to honk me off. Where all my characters turn gay or something. Well, yeah. It's just, I was just going, it's just one day I was sitting there and thinking about, considering Izuku, he is, I thought, dude, if there was ever a paladin, it was either All Might or Izuku, I'm like, let's see if we can squeeze a little Warcrafter in there. Get in there! Get in there! Get in the bottle! Get in the bottle! And away we went. Well, you pay rent, consider what I grew up in the age of video arcades where you paid $1 You paid a quarter at a time for 3 lives. You know, so you know, and man, getting quarters to play those games, getting a chance to play those games was, practically divine providence. Because and Dad would give us a couple of quarters or maybe a buck, and we'd play the quarters, and we'd play, and zoom, and done, And I thought about it, and I thought, X number of dollars a month, I spend more than that on pizza. I spend more than that on a pizza. So, it's not that big a deal. Sometimes I cancel I suspend my account from time to time when finances are a little slim, so I just pick right back up later. Let's see. People's Bancorp. I finally went ahead and bought the new bed that I need. The price on the mattress was dropping and dropping and dropping, and it was down to $80, and I figured it was going to bounce back anytime soon. And so I said $80 for the frame, $80 for the mattress. Ching, done. It's on its way. It'll arrive. May not I just have to clear out a space in the living room, and I'll set my bed up, my new bed up here. That way I won't have to heat or cool two separate parts of the house. And also I can use my rainy day setting on my screensavers, so help me go to sleep. Put everything. I want to put everything. I'm basically moving into my own living room. I just got to get these bags of trash out of the living room so that I have room to set up my new bed. My old bed is actually a futon, a fold-out futon couch bed thing, and it is broken. It is so broken. I have 2 sheets of plywood slid up under the mattress because the struts are broken, and it's a tragedy. Seriously. Desperately needed a new mattress, desperately needed a new frame, got them both. Yay. It's all about budgeting, Scooching my butt over one side here. Let's see here. Okay. Yep. Everything's in. Yeah, I was just checking some things. Everything's in order. Yay! And my rent check went through. The thingamy check went through. That went through. That went through. Everything's good. Yes, good. Okay. Checking the balances, making sure everything's in and out that's supposed to be. But yeah. Let's see. We got news. Any news? Blabberbuzz alerts. Oakley dokley. Yeah, the next expansion they're coming out with is called Shadowlands. They're doing a huge level squish. Right now, your characters can go from level 1 to level 120. They're going to squish that down to 50 levels. 60, actually. And you have to get to level 50 before you go into the Shadowlands. And also, instead of having, as it currently stands, all the expansions, you have to go through one before you've leveled up to go to another, and you basically have to go through them in sequence. The way they're doing, they're squishing it, they're changing the story setup a little bit. They're updating the game story so that you start out in current times rather than basically traveling back in time to start. And each of the areas now, each of the expansions is now basically an area that you can choose from any of them to level up in. If you want to level up a little bit in Battle for Azeroth, yes, you can. If you want to level up in Draenor, you can level up in Draenor. If you want to level up in Cataclysm, you can level up in Cataclysm. If you want to level up in in Legion, you can do it there. So on and so forth. Hooray. So, yeah, anyway. I don't know what VA benefits are. I'm assuming veteran something benefits. Veterans Association, yeah. I made a lot of mistakes. I didn't. Well, I've got Molina Healthcare, which is through Medicaid, and I made all sorts of assumptions, and I didn't know. Nobody told me, and I had no idea this was a thing. That I knew that I could get transportation to my doctor or to the hospital or to a clinic or whatever for with my insurance. I didn't know that I could get transportation to the pharmacy. I didn't know that my card would cover certain dental work, and I didn't know it would cover eyeglasses, optometry. So I'm probably going to look around and see if they, find an optometrist and get my my eyeball windows updated. I didn't know to ask. I didn't even, I didn't know what to ask. I didn't even know to ask, and I didn't know how. This is all details that are in in all the fine print, and nobody really sits down and reads them through and studies them in depth. Most people are just looking through there trying to look for booby traps. You know what I'm saying? They don't expect to find an Easter egg in their insurance papers. These are things that you have no idea exist, that you would never think to ask for, but they don't think of to tell you. And when you do find out about them, it's completely by accident. Ta-da! Bet you never saw that coming. Ah! Supplies. I dare you to name that joke. Now that is Weird Al Yankovic's UHF. You know, the good guys had all teamed up and are trying to rescue their janitor from the bad guys. And the bad guys are running through their building, and they hear a knock coming from behind one of the doors. there's this one character. He's stereotypically Chinese, and he's a martial artist teacher who becomes one of the hosts of Weird Al's TV shows, and the bad guys are running through the building, and they hear a knock coming from on the door, and they go, "Who is it?" And no answer. And they open it, and just before they open the door, you see a sign on it that says "Supplies." And they open it up, and the entire class of martial artists is standing there, "Supplies!" and punch the crap out of them. You couldn't get you got a general discharge, couldn't get your education benefits. I have no idea what the difference is. I know there's, all I know about, discharge is, from Klinger, from MASH, dishonorable discharge, Section 8. So I don't know what the difference is between a general and honorable discharge is, or how you would get one. So, write a new fanfiction, Minecrafter. Somebody else did. Somebody else did that. They wrote a story. It's a worm fanfiction where the protagonist has all the powers of the little guy in Minecraft. Such as being able to store several thousand tons of raw material in his backpack. And being able to tunnel through anything, and but yeah, and make gateways into parallel dimensions with obsidian. Now, I've seen a couple of fanfictions. I told you there's several fanfictions where Taylor Hebert, she becomes a dragon of some sort. Wyvern is a very good one. It's ongoing. Some stories they have her turn into a Dungeons and Dragons dragon. Scaling Up is another one that's, well, it's okay. It's not my favorite one. Basically because whoever decided to write the story, basically the author made her a little overpowered. She's a great dragon. She's a really fantastic dragon too, and she's also, which means is that in Dungeons and Dragons terms, is she is she's not only capable of turning into a giant fire-breathing, nearly indestructible engine of destruction. She has magic powers too, equivalent to a top tier, top level, whatever the highest level in Dungeons and Dragons is, sorcerer. So just a little bit of overkill there. I still read it though. It's a good write. It's just not just. I love you, but I've got other stories that are my real favorites. Wyvern, like I said, and then there's I'm not the only one to write Taylor Hebert in a My Little Pony crossover. There's one story that had her gained the power to turn into Celestia from My Little Pony. It was interesting, but it was also sort of lacking because their portrayal of there was a certain thing lacking, namely that none of the characters, nobody, not even the little girls, not even the little girl character went, "Ooh, pony, pony." Nobody did that. I mean, we're talking a gleaming white pony with a beautiful flowing rainbow-colored mane, wings, and a unicorn horn, and nobody went ee over it. And actually, she came across as sort of creepy. It didn't quite work. There was another one where Discord, of all people, of all characters, stepped in during Taylor's trigger event, stopped the trigger event, and gave her instead the abilities of he basically gave her the abilities of the main six. He gave not only Earth Pony strength, Pegasus speed, and Unicorn magic, which gets really interesting because she has to learn to control it. And she also gets their individual abilities. For instance, she gets Fluttershy's affinity for animals, and Applejack's ability to tell a lie, to recognize a lie when the instant she hears it, and so on and so forth. And she also gets basically she gets a sort of a subconscious librarian in her head, and researcher, and, sort of I don't know how you'd put it, a mini Twilight Sparkle subconscious. All she has to do is she soaks up any reading material she gets, and she gains, all she has to do to learn a new spell is say out loud what it is she wants the spell to do, and her subconscious starts researching the spell. She never knows how long it's going to take either. If it's a simple spell, she'll have it in a few minutes. If it's a really complicated one, it'll take a couple of days, or maybe even a couple of weeks. And she starts making magical devices for everybody, and it's an interesting read, to say the least. I don't know if it's ongoing or not, because it stopped off at a pretty good point, where if the author decided that was enough, it would work right there. What else was there? It was. Several of these stories, I gotta say, they seem to skip over the stuff in the middle. The personal stuff, the stuff that builds the characters, develops the characters' personalities, broadens the sense of the world that the story is set in. The one about Taylor turning into an Alcorn, turning into Celestia, basically. It practically skips from her trigger event straight over to the Leviathan attack. with barely skimming over events in between, and not too many events at all for that matter. So the story came across as feeling sort of hollow. Fluff isn't just fluff, and it isn't just filler either. It's if you're gonna make a cream filled donut, you got to put the cream in the middle. And that's what this I try to put the little personal moments in any of my stories, to flesh out the characters, make them more real, give them more moments to be human. Uh, Also to give more moments for them to be funny. It's been just about universally acknowledged that one of the funniest scene that Taylor, that in Lady Bird, Taylor's trigger event and Void Cowboys trigger event, Greg Vader's trigger event, epically hilarious. Taylor turns into a cute little purple unicorn and then proceeds to kick three different kinds of candy-colored crap out of Shadow Stalker. And another guy came back and said that was only beaten by Greg Vader jumping up and down on top of on top of Lung, pounding him into the ground and screaming how he was Void bleeping cowboy. It feels good to know you've made a good influence. I feel bad for saying that that one story scaling up isn't one of my favorites, but the author, she told me flat out that I actually inspired her to try her hand at writing, and I'm like, oh well, there you go. I'm flattered. I'm plus flattered. I'm flattered. Wow. Yay, well, my ego's been puffed up and, stuck up on the refrigerator door. Yay! Yeah. Heck, one of Weird Al's best works, that movie, UHF, is pretty much his magnum opus, if you ask me. That blind guy sitting there with all the little jokes in the background, like the blind guy sitting on a park bench next to the hobo. The blind guy's holding a Rubik's Cube, and he turns it a couple of times. That it? No. And he turns it a few more times. That it? No. It takes you a minute. Spatula City, we've got spatulas, and that's that. Wheel of fish. You so stupid. Yeah, and away we go, Stanley Spadowski's Funhouse. Yeah, it was a dumb movie, but it was a fun one too, and one the whole family could sit down and watch without being afraid that somebody's about to get an education they weren't ready for. No, no, you don't see too many movies like another one that comes to mind in that vein is Spaced Invaders. Three not too bright members of the Martian space fleet, well, not three, a ship, well, anyway, a group of not too particularly smart Martians happened to pick up the broadcast, the commemorative broadcast of Orson Welles' War of the Worlds. They think that Mars is invading Earth, and they end up landing in Big Bean, Indiana, and wreaking havoc. It was funny as heck, dumb, but funny. And I'm like, how are those mutually exclusive? Now, I've seen movies that were dumb, trying to be funny, and not funny. If it's, to coin a phrase, if it's dumb but it's funny, it's not dumb. It's achieved its goal. It's funny. It's telling a joke. It's not trying to write a thesis. But, my dad has a high standard. Like I said, my dad is king of complainers. Couldn't watch nothing on TV. He'd be sitting there, this is so stupid. Or telling us how unrealistic it was. Dad, we're watching The Incredible Hulk. It's about a large man covered in green paint, smashing buildings with his bare hands. Pray tell, what part of that failed your suspension of disbelief? Or he'd tell us awful things about the actors and actresses. Oh, that guy used to be in, I heard that guy used to be in porn. Thank you, Dad. That really, livened up, brought the whole experience to life for the rest of us. Thank you. Nobody needed to know that. Nobody gained anything from knowing that. Okay. Well, good night, Amiga Dragon. Oh, okay, it is closing. It is 10 minutes till 5. And I think it's a good idea to call it a night or a morning or whatever it is wherever you are. Thank you all for tuning in. I just needed to vent my spleen and just talk to somebody for a while. So I'll see you all. I don't know whether to say today, tomorrow, or next day. So later. You all take care of yourselves and have a good. Again, whatever time it is, y'all take care of yourself. God bless, and may Jesus look over y'all. Okay?